And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the latest episode of the Sling'N podcast. I'm TJ.
And I'm Kent.
And joining us tonight in the hot seat is the suited shootist, Alex. Alex, welcome to the show, bud.
Hey, guys. Thrilled to be here. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. You know, well, we've come unprepared. It was better to, find somebody that was at least better looking than us. So,
I was supposed to prepare?
No.
Oh, good.
But if you did, even if you thought about preparing, you put more effort into the show than Kent and I do. So things will work out. So Alex, in typical fashion for newcomers to the podcast, of course, we love to give you all an opportunity to introduce yourselves to the world and our dozens of listeners, both on YouTube and on our podcast players.
Dozen shit. You're killing me.
No, okay. So, I'll quit being modest. Thousands around the world.
There we go. It's much better.
Practically syndicated, right? Joe Rogan, we're coming for you. But we do like to give our guests an opportunity to introduce themselves to the world. So, Alex, if you could be so kind, please explain to everybody who the hell you are.
Yeah, sure. So I run a YouTube channel called The Suited Shootist, and as you would expect, it's kind of the intersection of a professional lifestyle and an armed lifestyle. And I'm most well known for yelling at dudes to pull up their pants and talking about the biggest mistakes I've ever made. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. Never carried a gun for a living. I'm just a yuppie white suburbanite that happens to have a carry permit.
Yuppie white suburbanite that happens to have a carry permit should be on a bumper sticker if not already.
I can think of a few places.
That's good shit. So, what kind of was the genesis? What drove you to becoming the suited shootist? What made you decide you had info that it's like, you know what, damn it, I gotta start a channel?
So the genesis of it actually was the Rangemaster Tactical Conference in 2019. At that point, I was working like a genuine white collar suit and tie job every day, and I had spent some time just kind of trying to rectify the dress code that I had with the optimal tool set that had just kind of been beaten into me, because I was a gun guy well before I ever got into men's style. I spent my first couple of years here in Houston working at one of the bigger gun shops in town, and I kind of started dressing like an adult later. So I was very entrenched in that mindset of you got to have the full-size handgun, you should have the reload, you got to have the flashlight, you got to have all this stuff with you. And it was a real struggle trying to cram all of that stuff into a wardrobe that wasn't really conducive to it. And in my research, I wasn't really able to point to anybody and think, that looks like my context. So I've been kicking the idea around for a minute, and the credit really goes primarily to two people. And those are Greg Ellifritz and the tactical professor, Claude Warner, because those were the two guys that I floated the idea by in New Orleans. And it was just an emphatic response of, no, absolutely, you need to be talking about this. So it started off for the first year as a WordPress blog. And then after that, I got some advice from another friend of mine that works in the firearms marketing space. And he said, dude, honestly, if it's more than 500 words, it should probably be a video. So that's how the YouTube channel launched.
Very, very cool. It's funny you brought up Ellifritz, sir. I was trying to think of guys like, all right, so a couple dudes are snazzy dressers. Craig Douglas came to mind.
Yeah.
But it's funny because while I don't necessarily dress as adulty as you do, sometimes like dudes have to dress like, God forbid, adults. And you can get away with murder in your freaking, I have a gun, 4,000 pocket 511 pants, and you're, 3 sizes too big, baggy button up, and, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But you said men's fashion in that, like you were in the industry from not the gun industry, but the fashion industry, and you were previous to that. Is that
kind of? And the real catalyst for me trying to improve my style was when my wife and I were still dating, because there's one of our photos on Facebook, And it is that quintessential, you look at it and go, what in the hell is she doing with him? Because it was just, that was my wake up call. I was like, okay, I need to start improving my presentation because it's reflecting on her as much as it reflects on me. So, I mean, I've never like worked in menswear professionally, but it was just one of those things that I realized that the baggy cargo shorts and the graphic t-shirts from Kohl's weren't cutting it anymore. And the thing that people, it's one of the things that I harp on. Well, but here's the good news is that it's the point that I struggle with driving home the most is there's a huge distinction between dressing well and dressing up. You can have somebody in an $8,000 Tom Ford suit that is only dressed up, but not dressed well. Meanwhile, you can have a dude in Wrangler boots or Wrangler jeans and Ariat boots who can be notably well dressed. It's more than anything just about care and authenticity. We've all seen the person who they go out and they buy the Wonder Blaster of the week with all the tactical shit on it because that's what the internet says they should have, regardless of if it's relevant to their needs or their lifestyle. And just like how picking the wrong firearm without the appropriate thought can kind of make you look foolish, your wardrobe is the same thing. I don't lounge around the house dressed like this. If I'm going to just gas the car up, chances are I'm probably in joggers and a hoodie. But fit, color, all that stuff plays into it. So you could be well dressed and still be casual about it.
Where does someone go to get like a dude, a real goddamn American dude? Because I'm not walking into some store and going like, "Hey Cedric, suit me up, would you?" Like, because I can't. I just can't. So where does a guy like TJ or I? Where do we go? Where do we start with that?
So, I guarantee you, I can also get my car batteries there.
Nice, TJ.
Solid. You may not be wrong. I would rather go to Walmart or Sears back when that was a thing and buy clothes that fit properly and was reflective of the message that I was trying to convey, than walk into some high-end department store and have, like, you remember Serge from the Beverly Hills Cop movies? Yeah, basically just have him outfit me and put something together for me. So, but to answer your question, the best resource that I've found personally that really works for guys in this space, where it's that intersection of trying to improve your image, but you're in the applied violence world, so you do punchy, shooty, stabby things. Tanner Guzzi is he was a men's clothier in Utah. He runs a page called Masculine Style. He has a book out as well. And what I found most useful in his content is he breaks down what he calls the 3 style archetypes. And essentially it's these 3 categories that men fall into. And it's typically a hybrid of them, but everybody is some combination of rugged, refined, and rakish. And just kind of break them down. You've got like rugged is Indiana Jones, refined is James Bond, and rakish is Captain Jack Sparrow.
Nice.
And so depending on whatever the dominant trait is, that is going to dictate what is going to feel most natural in your wardrobe. Because some of the YouTube channels that I had followed prior to that, they'd make these recommendations and I would try and make it work. And it felt awkward. It felt like a costume, and I couldn't quantify why that was. But once I found Tanner's information, that was immensely helpful. On Craig's recommendation, I picked up a copy of the book Dressing the Man, and that is really helpful just in terms of understanding the mechanics of clothing in terms of fabric, color, pattern, cut, stuff like that. It is primarily focused on more formal attire, so suits and that kind of stuff, but a lot of the principles translate to a pretty broad spectrum. So those are arguably the 2 most useful. that I found. But Real Men, Real Style, Antonio Centeno's YouTube channel, he does a pretty good job as well. Some of his delivery is a little Billy Mays-ish for my taste, but overall the quality of the info is pretty solid.
Very cool. I just posted a link in the live YouTube chat to Taylor Guzzi's website.
Yep.
So, and I probably am going to buy that book, assuming it has an audio book thing here shortly. So that's pretty cool.
There's a pretty strong visual component. So the good news is there are a lot of large, brightly colored pictures. So you'll be fine.
I knew you were going to do that. That's good. There's pictures. I might be able to get through it. That's good news.
Well, but I mean, the reality is you're talking. Yeah, you're talking about a visual medium.
Stop making fun of me, TJ. The man's trying to be smart.
I'm intimidated. I'm sorry. You know how I get.
So let's talk a little bit about the sacrifice piece of this, because the whole, every time somebody talks about putting on a suit or putting on nice clothes for whatever reason, they start talking about all the stuff they can't carry. Right? That's the first rip is like, well, I gotta get rid of the ankle med kit because these fucking pants won't pleat around the ankle med kit. I gotta put the Roland Special away and put the J frame and the Enigma on. Which, first of all, like, bro, go to your brother's wedding with your fucking J frame and your Enigma. Like, relax. So there's a little of that. But what are you able to carry tools wise? I don't give a fuck what gun it is. I don't give a fuck what compensators on it. Like, what tools are you able to pull off in formal attire? Let's say, like, legit formal attire.
So the good news is that as much as I am a strong proponent that the whole concept of dressing around the gun needs to die, there are some accommodations that can be made that will make certain pieces of clothing more friendly to certain tool sets. It is entirely possible to carry some double stack 15 plus round striker fired semi-auto variant in a suit or in, just a tucked in shirt and slacks, provided that you understand how clothing is supposed to fit, so that way it's cut to accommodate the extra room where it needs to without everything being a size bigger, which now just makes it look like you're wearing daddy's clothing and playing dress up. So that's entirely possible. However, that's only part of the equation, because the other component of it is what has you dressing to that level. You mentioned like the brother's wedding being a prime candidate. If, depending on the setting, it is most likely a relatively known quantity of people in a fairly controlled setting. At least here in Texas, there's required to be law enforcement on site for those types of events anyway. And so if you're doing a genuine threat assessment.
Did I just learn there's have to be cops at a wedding in Texas?
So, I mean, everyone that I've been to, there is at least like one officer there. I don't know if it's crowd control or what. Not necessarily like church weddings, but if you're doing it at like a venue, yeah.
My brother's wedding's full of cops because they're all damn cops. But
yeah.
I've never been to a wedding where there was like a actual assigned cop, like a football stadium. You are considerably cooler than us, Alex. I'm starting to come to the conclusion that you're just that much cooler than us. If you're going to pick Joe Rogan's wedding,
I wouldn't know about that. But the point being is, you don't cater the tool set to what you're wearing. You cater your tool set to the threat profile. And the reality is me going to a 200 person wedding is very different math than me going to like the Galleria. So
yeah,
I will arguably equip myself differently depending on the totality of the circumstance. Because now, if I've only got the one gun, and for a lot of folks, that's their reality, is, shelling out $500 for a single defensive firearm is already a huge investment. And then hopefully they're spending good money on a quality holster and a decent belt and all that. So all in, even before you're talking training, they're already knocking on the door of $1,000, which is not an insubstantial amount of money. So if that's your limitation, if you've only got the one gun, ideally you want to make it as general purpose as possible. But, you know, you get a police trade-in or whatever because you just had to scrape your pennies together, it is possible to discreetly carry something that is in that Glock 19 family. Now, that's not what I choose to do, but that's because I've got choices. So my normal, legitimate everyday carry at this point, the thing that I just hard stop, do not leave the house without is pepper spray. Just period, hard stop. Because regardless of where I'm going, as long as it's not on an airplane, that can go with me. If you've, for the people that either have seen or will see my Instagram, I am a fan of cocktails and other adult beverages. So in Texas, at least, if you are carrying a firearm in an establishment that makes 51% of their revenue from alcohol consumed on site, that's felony time. So we've already established I'm too pretty to go to jail. And I'm not
I'll give you that, sir. I will give you that.
The 30-06, 30-7 signs, those are non-compounding misdemeanors. So, if you can withstand a $150 slap on the wrist, everybody is going to make that decision for themselves. There's no real serious consequence for that one. But carrying a gun in a bar, big no-no. So in those instances, I opt for a sap or a blackjack. Because again, thankfully here in Texas, those are legal. And personally, I prefer it to a knife. If I am going with a firearm, for the last several months, my daily was a J-frame because it was the other reasonably accommodated firearm that I had while my Glock was out getting worked on at bore site. So it was kind of a forced experiment. It worked out pretty good. So, and especially with the time that I've spent lately with Daryl Bulkey and kind of his philosophy on like anti-mugging guns and all that kind of stuff. I think that smaller capacity firearms that are easier to live with, that require less accommodation to live with, are a viable choice for a very large segment of the population. The reality is it, I mean, unfortunately, using the Buffalo, shooting as an example, is that what you want to go to that fight with? No, but that's not what it's designed for. It's not a hunting firearm.
Well, I mean, a 22 is a hunting firearm, which is where they belong. Stop it. No. Stop it. I just want to argue with DB just because I want to get him all pissed off and argue with him, not because I actually believe what I'm saying. The LCR and 22 punch thing is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like I get it. It's funny when you don't have to. So for me, right, I don't have to make many of these accommodations.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they're not viable, and it doesn't mean they don't have relevance. It's just one of those things where I will get away with what I want to get away with.
And that's the other thing that people tend to gloss over, sometimes just because they don't have the experience for it to make sense. But everybody is immediately they go to the legal consequences because those tend to be the most severe. They're like, oh well, so what are the bad things that can happen? Well, I can either get hurt, killed, or go to jail. Those are the big three. Those are the ones that we're trying to avoid. Those are the weekend safety brief topics. Stay out of jail, stay out of prison, and stay off the news. Right.
Right.
But I've had kind of a very diverse experience up to this point. I grew up in the DC area. My family is from New York. I went to school in Louisiana, and now I'm living out here in Texas. So my social circle spans a pretty broad spectrum of social and political viewpoints.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people that I interact with that aren't necessarily on board with the idea of people carrying firearms for defensive application. And so Sometimes the level of concealment that I opt for is just to be polite. Sometimes the degree of concealment that I opt for is to avoid social fallout, because let's just say, as a hypothetical, you have a significant other who has a very well-paying job, and they have an office function where they are an honoree.
Yep.
And that entire office culture is aggressively anti-gun. There is a segment of the population where the attitude is, well, if I can't go there with a gun, then I'm not going. Okay, cool. That is the decision matrix that they're going to go through. Personally, if I had taken that standpoint, I would have missed a very good friend's wedding in Brooklyn, New York. I would have not been able to take my wife to the Caribbean for a honeymoon. I would not have been able to stand feet away from some of the most impressive Renaissance art in the Vatican that I've ever experienced. For me, these are all very significant and enriching life experiences that I would have missed out on had the gun been the determining factor.
Sure. Your kid has a school function. You got to go. Mm-hmm. You're like, no, there's no question. There's times.
Yeah. Like you're going to tell your kid, sorry, Jimmy, we're not going to Disneyland because daddy can't bring his gun.
No, you're just going to stick that thing further in the prison purse and see what happens. You're getting it through.
Mm-mm.
You're getting it through. No, I know that's the thing. Like I love the internet warrior thing. Like I'll make it work. It's like, bro, I don't know why you're so worried about making it work. You don't train with the thing in the first place. You can't hit the broadside of a barn's asshole. So
can we stop with the personal attacks, please? I'm sitting here quietly, behaving.
No, you're very much. See, I don't know. I think a guy who's self-actualized enough and well-rounded enough in skill sets of all kinds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know, dude. If you're really that afraid of the universe that you can't go anywhere without a gun, Now, if I am, however, the kind of person who, if you told me, hey, you can do A or B, like if my wife and I are sitting around, she's like, hey, do you want to go here or here tonight? And one place was rabidly anti-gun and one place didn't give a shit or was, God forbid, gun positive, then hey, let's go be with our people.
Oh yeah, for sure, absolutely. But yeah.
Yeah.
But at that point, it's not a limiting factor. It's just a tiebreaker.
Right. No, we have. I mean, I have clients who do things for a living that obviously they don't. The gun thing is a problem for them as far as social and personal consequences go.
Mm-hmm.
And some I know choose to still carry in environments where there could be some serious consequences. I mean, losing a job is one thing, depending on how your life is set up and how things are working for you. That may or may not be a huge consequence.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look who I'm talking to, right? Like, you've been there.
Yeah, I saw that movie, and it's not one that I recommend to other people. But again, everybody does the math for themselves. There are people that have immediately transferable skill sets. My understanding of it is that there are, like in the trades, there's not necessarily a whole lot of downtime. So, if you're a damn good welder and you get shit canned at one place, you're probably not going to be too hard up looking for work for too long. But it depends. It depends on the industry. So, that's definitely going to be the main deciding point there. But it's interesting, what you said about the self-actualization, because that's hard. It's really hard, and it requires a lot of very uncomfortable introspection. And the reality is that we don't like doing stuff that's hard. One of the reasons that shooting is as engaging as it is because it provides immediate feedback. And, even to an extent, jiu-jitsu is the same way. If I'm getting folded in half, I can usually walk that back to exactly where it is that I fucked up and what I need to work Well, or if nothing else, it's so actively mentally engaging that the only thing that I can think about is the puzzle that's immediately in front of me, as opposed to sort of the second and third order effects of, what that means on the grand scheme of things. But that's a conversation I've had with a few folks is that their sense of identity is so strongly tied to the firearm that if it goes unchecked, it can be really unhealthy.
That's the same. I feel like that's the same guy or girl who takes the talisman approach to defensive tools in the first place, right? Like that same person is the person who's relying on the psychological stop.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we've seen from how many examples that's reliable, because you have a gun.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And the scary point is that it'll go even deeper than that. They'll be signing up for their third, fourth, or fifth performance shooting class, but they will look at something like a deadly force law class or a medical class and go, "Oh no, that's way too expensive." It's the same as the person that's buying their third or fourth or fifth handgun but hasn't taken a class yet. It's just, and it's. I was talking with some friends. I think this was a couple of months ago. You've seen the competency diagram where it's kind of the wagon wheel and you plot the various points and it kind of turns into this spiky little starburst looking thing. And my goal is to keep that as round and as symmetrical as possible. And I see people out here where their shit looks like an ice cream cone, where all the competencies are here, but their shooting abilities out here.
Yep.
And it's like, I mean, cool. You're a great shooter, but you take a great shooter and you lock him in a room with a professional felon. Who do you think is walking out of that room alive?
Yeah. And
it's not because of the shooting ability.
Yep. It's the well-rounded thing. I don't know. There's an ego problem there. There's a maturity problem there. There's a laziness or lack of effort problem that all kind of can hit guys. The ego problem, especially for guys, is high, right? Because you can make the dick joke or however you want to do it. The guys need to compensate with something. So dudes will buy the kick-ass car or buy the whatever, some outward display of awesomeness.
It's about status.
Right. Some dudes have conflated that with the defensive culture and mindset, the outward displays of like, oh, I've got the greatest Gucci gear ever, and I've been to all the classes, and I do this and this and this and this and this. But they haven't really put the package together whereby somebody who's living life, just living life, like, hey, I'm living life. Well, Alex, yours and TJ's life are all very different.
Exactly.
TJ can concealed carry 11 Desert Eagles at work because you're looking at his office. His office is full of guns. There he is. There's my man. He's there. He works in a corporate environment that may give him some trouble for that too. Not necessarily in his direct employment, but in his industry for sure.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, it's about reading the. Actually, no, we can address that a little bit. So,
sure.
Yeah, yes, I work in corporate America, right? IT firm, whatever have you. Honestly, just to kind of one of the reasons that I'm still with my company, right, is just the overall culture that we have there at the company. In leadership, senior leadership, from myself on up, there's a lot of veterans. There's a lot of veterans mixed and intermingled throughout, even. Not to sound diminutive, but the lower ranks of the organization, and I can say, generally speaking, most people either are 2A positive, or they just don't give a shit, right? Because we all trust each other. We're fortunate enough to have a small enough work environment that they really don't care. Sure. However, I am mature enough to understand that it is a professional environment, right? Mm-hmm. Religion, gun, and your dick all have a lot of commonalities, and that is, you can have one. It's all fun and games, but keep it in your pants or keep it to yourself. until the setting changes and that's appropriate.
Yep.
Right. You know, there's a lot of people on my team and that I work with that are, you know, that they may be in the LGBT community, you know, left wing, right wing, everything in between. No one talks about it. And if we do, it's generally because we have that relationship with each other where we've been working together for so long that we're actually comfortable with talking about it with each other. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't just like, you don't get the new guy or girl in the office. It's like, oh, so, hey, you happen to be gay or you voted for Hillary or whatever. You don't start with that. Right. Read the room. That's really what it comes down to.
And that's the other piece of it is that level of social literacy is, it's so rare that it's almost a superpower.
Yeah, it pains me to say that, but you're absolutely right. You know,
and like
like
in the grand scheme of things, but also just because haven't really taken a cheap shot at you yet in the IT community, especially like
absolutely.
You techno Kremlins are nuts.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You're great. You're great at what you do, but there's not a whole lot of that interpersonal aptitude that exists, and that's it. It's the ability to read the room of, number one, because you know the whole fuck your feelings thing is a very sort of popular attitude, and people will abuse that as an excuse to just be shitty to somebody else.
Yeah,
because they can.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things. I hope that we haven't actually stated it overtly on the podcast, previous episodes, whatever have you. But, you know, we talk about being a responsible, you know, trained, capable self-defender, right?
Uh-huh.
That term responsible has a lot of different connotations to it. It's not just about going to get the training. It's not about, you know, being well-versed in both, you know, the tactical, strategic, but also maybe like the medical support or support roles like medical and communications and the like. But it's about just being a decent human being, right? Exactly. This is one of those things that, you know, and we could commiserate about, you know, the men of yesteryear versus the men of today, or the men of our fathers' generation, right? Versus today, in that regardless of what their moral values might have been, they knew when to shut the hell up. And that's an incredibly important value, right?
Yep.
It just boggles my mind. Nobody can just have everyone's so polarized. Now, luckily, I can say, at least for our regular viewers and our listeners, you know, they're generally of a similar mind. You know, they're pretty laid back, they're chill. We don't get a whole lot of the tactical Timmy crowd, which actually kind of bumps me out because it's so much untapped potential for humor that we could actually write into the show. But you know, it's just. Yeah. It saddens me to see that people hear that word responsible, like, oh, okay, well, finger off the trigger, right? Like, no, dude. How about just the responsibility for common decency and equal treatment of your fellow man and or woman, whatever the case might be.
Absolutely, and that's another piece of it that people miss out on is, you know, especially in this crowd. If I were to use the term 2A ambassador, the image that evokes is some asshole walking into a coffee shop with a rifle on his shoulder to prove a point. But the reality of it is that all of us have the opportunity to serve as 2A ambassadors. And the consideration is, without getting overly political, because things have gotten as aggressively tribal as they have, on the two sides, I mean, on the extreme ends of that spectrum, people on those two sides are not changing the mind of the other. But the challenge is that whichever side of that camp you fall into, there's already this caricature that you have in your mind, the stereotype of who your enemy is.
Yep.
And for the people that are rabidly pro-gun, they are never going to really come to any sort of eye-to-eye terms with somebody who's rabidly anti-gun, and vice versa. But what gets neglected is there's a whole bunch of people in the middle that are non-gun, where guns are just not a part of these people's reality. It's not necessarily a taboo subject, and it's not necessarily something that carries negative connotation. It's just not on their radar at all. And so if you are the only firearm owner that this person interacts with in their entire life, knowingly, then the reputation of the entire 2A community is sitting squarely on your shoulders. So do you want to come across as a level-headed, coherent, and articulate person that is able to formulate an argument and actually carry on a conversation, maybe not even about guns? Or do you want to be do you want to fit into the template of the foaming at the mouth zealot who it just, chants shall not be infringed and my rights? And it's one of those things, while you may be technically correct, you ain't moving the ball forward.
Yeah.
I mean, my argument to that would be, not necessarily even an argument, but my input to that would be, let's take a look at that. What I would probably argue is a preponderance of the society, right? Now, we three are exposed to both of those, but more of the polar ends of the spectrum, right? Or the extreme ends. Borderline fringe groups, I don't necessarily want to go that harsh with it, but there's a preponderance of society that just isn't different.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You see that time and time again, right? Armed or not, whatever have you. These people just don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I would argue that those people, if anything, should be, in fact, the target audience. I would even say for both groups. I mean, Jesus, stand for something.
Yeah.
Right? Because I would argue that if self-defense, if we could reasonably suspect that somebody that doesn't have guns anywhere on their radar probably isn't thinking about defending themselves at all. Right. Mm-hmm. These are the people that probably don't have fire extinguishers in their house. They don't know how to plant a small garden so that they can provide for themselves.
They don't even know CPR.
Don't even know CPR. Medical was going to be my next topic of it, right? The sustainability of you as an individual, as a living, breathing person on this earth depends on your survival instinct. That doesn't mean you have to go armed to the teeth, mm-hmm. right? I'm sure there were plenty of cavemen and cavewomen that didn't have spears, right?
Sure.
So it really kind of concerns me that, those are the people that are going to be exposed to those extreme cases, and they're either going to be polarized along with them, which is not good either way. Right. To your point, Alex, the my rights shall not be infringed, etc. versus the guns are bad, unintelligible screeching noises. Right.
Yeah. Well, and the unfortunate reality is that the folks that don't necessarily agree with our chosen lifestyle are the ones that are able to make a much more compelling emotional argument. And for the non-initiated, on paper, all of that can sound pretty compelling. And I think one of the things that the defensive firearm community loses sight of is the fact that while our end game is personal protection and self-preservation, the gateway drug is recreational shooting.
Absolutely.
Because it's there is, on the defensive side, everything is a little fatalistic. It's a little macabre, because the very nature of it is you're talking about the worst day of somebody's life. And if they are just one of those, doe-eyed folks who thinks they live in a sufficiently good neighborhood and that bad things only happen to other people, regardless of the fact that to other people, you're other people. It's one of those that, just the act of shooting a firearm for the first time is so entertaining. When I was in college, 3 of my best friends, one of them was from Long Island, one of them was from Greenwich Village, and the other one was from LA and went to Burning Man with her mom every year. I took these three women shooting, and for the first time, I was their introduction to firearms, and they would hound me. I'm like, hey, when can I do that again? That was fun.
Right. Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's probably one of the most rewarding experiences, right? Yeah. Even if they choose not to carry a gun for self-defense, right? Or any other reason, maybe they'll never even own a gun in and of themselves. You're demystifying, you're destigmatizing the existence of these tools that we have chosen to carry whenever possible, right? And just realizing that yes, they can bring joy to people's lives, even from a recreational standpoint. I look at it a lot like jujitsu, right? Jujitsu is a gateway drug to personal physical fitness.
Yep.
You get those people that just hate going to the, look, I've done it, right? Aside from being an athlete in high school and whatever have you, I hated going to the gym. Mm-hmm. I hated it. Put me on a treadmill and just, just put me in a corner and make me watch paint dry again, right?
Yeah.
But start going, you induce a sense of competition, a sense of sport into the scenario, and you get people to want to do what they probably should be doing for the betterment of themselves anyway, right? And I started my jiu-jitsu journey, a little over 2 years ago, and my whole family trains in it now.
Yeah.
Right. It's the gateway drug.
John Hearn calls it broccoli nachos.
Go on.
Well, it's the way of tricking people into eating their broccoli. Like, the broccoli is good for them, but they don't want to do it, so you find a way to sneak it in on them.
Gotcha. Like, pizza is a health food.
I'll tell you what.
I mean, again, this is my sales guy coming out, but properly described, it's a salad.
I was just
exactly where I was going.
I like it.
The croutons crouton is a bit greasy, and it's on the bottom. It's okay. But no,
I count my cigar smoking as a vegetable, so.
Why not? I'll give it to you. So let's talk about the gun training aspect a little bit, because it would be easy. It would be easy for somebody to see this, no offense intended, and go, "Oh, this is a dude who dresses well and probably shoots a little, or whatever," right? Because the audience, the idea of this is to introduce you to a new audience, after all. So probably 70% of the people who see this or hear this at some point won't have heard of you before they fire it up.
Cool.
So are you a pretty face who shoots a little and wears nice suits, or do you get out there and train with those things? I know the answer, by the way. That's why I'm asking the question.
Of course. Yeah, no, that's completely valid. Answer is yes to both. So I'm a passable shooter. You can find me on Practice Score. I've got about 4 local club matches that I've shot so far. None of it is particularly impressive, but I've got, I think after this last tactical conference, I'm just on the verge of about 400 hours of open enrollment training total. And so, I was lucky enough to have collected all the ShivWorks Pokemon. So Craig, Cecil, Dr. April, God rest his soul, Larry, and Chris Fry. So, but yeah, and the pursuit has been the first couple of years. Well, it was weird because, again, first couple of years working at the gun shop, I did the typical range trips, turning ammo into noise. And then, interestingly enough, one of my coworkers sort of introduced me to the world of open enrollment training, because he was a tactical response alumnus, and Jaeger came to Bastrop with his fighting pistol class, and so that was my first introduction to it in 2009. I know he's a bit of a polarizing figure. People have a whole bunch of stuff to say about him on both sides. He was always super gracious to me. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think he fully embraced the WWF heel school of marketing, but I think it was a calculated decision on his part, and he's never given me a reason to say anything bad about him myself. So, with that said,
that's a really interesting descriptor of his marketing strategy. That totally makes sense now.
That sounds real familiar. We talked about the training. I
mean, I legitimately think at some point his email signature was "More people hate me than know who you are," or something to that effect.
Yes,
so,
that's true.
It's
interesting because he and I differ on one thing, really, which is that it seems to me that his fighting pistol curriculum, and I had the conversation, right?
Yeah.
The whole thing was like, look, these people are never going to fucking do this again, so we got to give them all this right now.
Yeah.
And in my heart of hearts, I don't believe that. I also don't believe in global warming, but it's probably fucking true.
Well,
right?
And what's
statistically, if you look at all the gun students, the man's probably right. Right.
And the nice thing is Carl Wren's done the math. Like,
right, you're right. He has
the 1%, basically. And that sentiment is shared by a lot of the guys that I've trained with. But after that, I still just kind of dicked around for a few years. Then I took Mag 40. Then I took ECQC. Then I got into jujitsu, and then I started actually taking some additional continuing education with pistols. Did a little bit with knives, enough to know that I really don't like the idea of knives for self-defense personally. So I'm going to try and avoid doing that if I can. A couple tactical conferences and some stuff like that. So, I mean, not that it's particularly impressive, but I do have my current CV and training history listed on the WordPress blog. So if anybody's actually curious of like, well, where the hell is his opinion coming from? I've got it all out there. So, there's that. But yeah, I try and take 1 to 2 classes a year. And what I've tried to do in the last year or so is shift away from just the mechanical shooting, because I don't have an official classifier, but if I had to estimate, I'm probably a high C, possibly low B class shooter. But what I'm chasing right now is I'm looking for people to fuck with me. Like I'm looking for the decision-making, thinking with a gun in your hand type of classes where you're in circumstances where you can actually make a wrong decision. So yeah. I'm going after a little bit more force on force. What really opened my eyes was Daryl Bulkey's counter robbery program. I'm still annoyed with him because he basically got me to murk a civilian with nothing but the absence of a piece of tape on the target. So it was interesting. So yeah, that's it. And I try and keep that relatively well rounded. I try and take a medical class every couple of years. I try and stay up to date on the deadly force law piece of the equation. So that's the trick, is if you're chasing all of the competencies, none of them are going to expand very rapidly.
This is absolutely true. Yeah. Well, I mean, don't shy away from your shooting CV, because quite frankly, you have 399 and 3/4 more hours than most of the people who want to talk shit about it in a training environment. So yeah, stop bitching at other people about it on the internet and go do it yourself, folks. It's funny because I caught the bug. I got into thousands of hours of open enrollment training, like some dudes get into fly fishing or fucking whatever, right? The approach, I can probably come to grips with the idea that the approach that you're taking, or that I've taken that approach later in life and then as a training professional, which is like, hey, look, what's actually going to benefit me here? Mm-hmm. Where's my skill set lacking? And that should be where we're like looking to sign up for something. Mm-hmm. And we're all guilty of it, right? Like, I'm a damn good shooter. What do I want to do? I want to go to a performance shooting class because it's fun and I'm good at it. Yep. Cool. Of course you do. Just like a damn good fisherman wants to go catch more fish, or like, that's an easy trap to fall into. Yep. It's another thing to do what I've been doing more recently and get your fat ass back into shape and do all the other things that are not easy to do. Mm-hmm. So that's one of those things that comes with maturity, I think. And some people reach that maturity, and some, quite frankly, some people just never do.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other reality of it, is the fact that I have an amazing wife who likes to travel, and so I don't have the luxury of dedicating all of my vacation time to gun school either. So, I gotta figure, my most limited everybody's most limited resource is their time, and right. So I got to figure out what why I'm doing this, and I got to figure out what's going to yield me the highest ROI, because I mean, if I spent all my time at gun school training for the fight, well, at that point, I have ceased to actually have a life outside of that. So what am I working to defend?
Unless it becomes your life, unless those people become your family and your friends, and that, like, unless there's the recreational component. But you do have to admit that there's a recreational component to it. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like you said about the, recreational or competitive shooting is the gateway drug.
Bear with me one moment. I'm having audio issues for whatever reason. I cannot hear you guys.
It's all good. We'll be.
So I'm going to let you guys talk amongst yourselves.
Sure.
And I will be right back.
Sure.
Oh, okay. I'm back. Never mind. We're good.
I find it funny that we were telling him verbally that we understood that he couldn't hear us. Fucking dumbasses.
We also look both ways crossing a one-way street, bud. It just happens.
You know what? I'm right there with you. I trust people about as far as I can throw them when it comes to the general public. So
You just need to add more judo to your training.
There we go. There we go.
You're not wrong.
So you brought up med class.
Mhm.
So I was kind of slow walking you down the tools rabbit hole.
Mhm.
Do you mix medical into your everyday carry, like priority number 2 after the pepper spray, or?
Yeah. So it's interesting, kind of what you mentioned in terms of the earlier when you were talking about how do you work gear into a suit. I've actually had fairly good success with the ankle medical kit. I think most people's mistake is that they try and cram too much shit in there. And they basically they're trying to have a complete IFAC on their ankle, and it don't work that way. Like, you definitely, like, tourniquet for sure, some kind of hemostatic gauze, maybe a compression bandage if you can fit it, and that's probably about it. So even in like the Duluth slim fit fire hose pants and jeans, I can run an ankle rig discreetly, no problem. And most like my slacks and my suit trousers aren't cut with nearly that aggressive of a taper. So it's definitely doable. And interestingly enough, back when I was still doing the written blog, I actually did an article which was how first person shooter video games influence my carry decision. And not like the old school GTA style ones where you're able to carry a full arsenal on your back, but like, the modern ones like Call of Duty and Wildlands and those, where you actually have to prioritize your loadout. So you've got your primary, your secondary, you've got like your specialty and whatever else.
Yeah, it takes into account the limitations of the human condition, right?
Exactly right. And so, the reason that OC is a non-negotiable for me is there are a whole lot of circumstances that I'm much more likely to run into that are not deadly threat, but would still warrant some degree of force, that I would like to avoid laying hands on somebody, because just, given the fact that I'm living in the suburbs, I like to only partially joke that the person that is most likely going to threaten my well-being is an unmedicated soccer mom with a tire iron. Now, the reality is I'm 6 foot, 230 pounds. So regardless of, what gentle art methodology I apply, I'm still a 230 pound dude putting hands on a woman, and the optics of that ain't great. So if I can just, give them the 6 foot eye poke and do it that way, I'd rather do that. Also, I have a couple neighbors that don't necessarily keep their dogs in the yards like they should, and thankfully they're friendly so far. But if I have to break up a dog fight, I'd rather do it with a can of pepper spray than reach my hands into that blender. So yeah, that's OC is absolutely number one for me. Medical is a close number 2. And, typically from there, it will be the, honestly, illumination before the firearm, which is interesting because I'm not one of those people that carries a flashlight 100% all the time, but I've also had a flashlight de-escalate situations that arguably may have required a firearm. So it's that delicate balance. And then the gun is the last part of the equation that comes. Take that back. The gun is the second to last part of the equation that ever comes in, and that is second only to spare ammunition, which quite literally the last time I strapped on a spare mag was the last time I went to New Orleans. So
yeah, that gets to be, you start to really fall down the rabbit hole of like, show me a civilian encounter that required a reload.
Well, yeah, because and that's it. Is people are building out their EDC loadouts like that scene from The Jerk. It's like, all I need is this rolling special, and this mag extension, and this spare mag. That's all I need. And just gonna keep going from there. Mm-hmm. So,
hey, bro, guilty as charged. Been there. Like,
and here's the thing. I have no problem with anybody doing that. Now, if you're carrying 2 spare mags and 3 knives, but no medical and no less lethal, okay, I'm going to make fun of you at that point.
Oh, dude, you should have seen him.
Oh
boy.
No shit, there you were.
Oh God, you should have seen this guy. I was in a very nice local gun store where the owner straight up looked at this dude who walked in. Guy comes walking in with 2 appendix holsters, left-handed, right-handed. So he's got 2 G somethings, 17s or 19s or whatever. He's got a freaking what looks like flintlock Derringer looking disaster on his one hip and a backpack. And I'm in there, picking up something as I'm want to do. And dude walks in and goes, "Hey, you got any hollow points?" And my man straight up put both palms on the counter of his little gun store, looked at this dude and went, "Not for you."
Damn.
I was like,
that's savage.
It's like, I fucking love you, bro.
Wow.
And he's standing there just as dumbfounded as you could be. And I'm looking at him going, and it, just like you said, man, I promise you, he walked into the next wherever he went looking just like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I promise you that whoever that person is who's in that like middle ground, that 50%, they saw him. They didn't see me that day. They have no idea who the fuck I was.
I'll take things that you would expect to see at a local second-rate gun show for $1,000, Alex.
Yeah.
Right. The one that blew my mind is when I took Mag 40. So like the for those that aren't familiar, this is Masad Ayyub's 40-hour deadly force law class. So it's not something that like the casual gun owner stumbles into.
Right.
One of the dudes for the entire classroom portion was wearing in outside the waistband holsters a brace of Glock 26s and one of the North American belt buckles, like the North American Derringer or like the mini revolvers belt buckles.
Oh my dear God.
Yeah.
Somebody actually bought one of those. And it wasn't a joke.
No.
Yeah. And that hurts my heart.
That's what I had the least problem with. I'm like, if you're going to expose your firearms, why are you carrying subcompact Glocks?
Yeah.
Because I'm, it's about
faster out of the holster, bro.
Yeah, dude. So no shit. So many years ago, when I worked at a gun store, I walked in one day and one of our managers had like every gun on the planet strapped to him. He looked absolutely ridiculous, and I'm like, "Bro, what the hell are you doing?" He goes, "I know what it looks like. I'm literally just trying to sell the holsters." So what he was doing was he was essentially being a living mannequin to show all the different types of, like, here's a shoulder holster, here's outside the waistband, inside the waistband, ankle holster. Like, he looked like he got dragged through a 511 Galco catalog.
Yeah.
Right. But he was like, I know what it looks like, but I wanted people to see all these different options. And I mean, to his point, it worked. He sold a shit ton of holsters that day.
Let's be honest. This is not the worst thing you found me doing.
That was about his attitude. Yeah. He was a good sport about it, but yeah, man, the downside is while he was joking, there are people out there that probably dress like that and they're not.
Yeah.
They're not joking.
Yeah. There's 2 dudes walking around in my town right now that have German Shepherds with police vests on them.
Mm-hmm.
I swear to God, police is spelled wrong. Like,
Pulees.
Pretty sure that says pole ice. I don't know. I like them boys. They damn sure don't say it right. And all the camos and all the guns.
Yeah.
And they go in and out of every gun store just on a rotation looking for primers for the reloading press they don't have. Like, and these are your people, right? Like, these are the people we're talking about. So, I don't know, man. So, of all those training experiences you've had so far,
mm-hmm.
what was the one that you thought was most applicable to your everyday life?
So, interestingly enough, and this was actually a video that I had done of kind of very high level, like, if you're going to pursue continuing education, which are the classes that I think are best to take. while it's not direct, so ECQC is on the list, and interestingly enough, ECQC is it's like the Schrodinger's cat of classes. It is both the most and least applicable class because the managing unknown contacts portion is invaluable. That is something that I have used more than anything else. And I mean, honestly, if they just had a 4, maybe 6 hour managing unknown contacts block that they could somehow commercialize, I would love to see that because it is.
Who's doing that? Cecil was just saying he was doing that.
Yeah, we just had Cecil on, and I could have swore he mentioned something about doing a muck class only.
I know that the muck piece was a much larger component of his like entangled handgun class, but I can't remember if he said that he was doing a muck class or if he had talked about doing a dedicated muck class. But
yeah, we have to go back and watch our own episode on that one.
Yeah. Well, and I just listened to it like last week, so I should know, but shame on me. But anyways, yeah,
shame on you. We were there.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that between the two of you, there's some significant head trauma. So,
oh, absolutely. Yeah. Wait, me and Cecil or me and Kent?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, so the managing unknown contacts pieces is invaluable. But the actual combatives component of it is useful because it's an ego check and it shows people's like, look, some of this stuff can be fairly easy to lose if you're it shows you how little control you can actually have over the situation without being fatalistic about it, which is a very delicate balance to strike.
Right. So,
I mean, Craig even admits that the entangled problem is definitely on the niche side of the equation. It's not necessarily guaranteed or universal. It's certainly applicable. So ECQC is definitely on my list.
Cool.
Before he passed, William April's Unthinkable class was on my list as well. The best comparable material that I've taken so far is they're both from Citizens Defense Research. One of them is the like mental preparedness class that Chris Seipert puts on. It's a 1-day lecture. And then the 4-hour classroom block of Armed Parent Guardian.
Yep.
So between the two of those, they get close. They obviously don't go into the same clinical depth that Dr. April did, but they touch on a lot of the same subject matter. And basically it's criminal psychology and victim selection. I understand that John Murphy talks about that in his class as well. I just haven't taken it yet, so I can't speak to it directly. Legal is critical. I would say at this point, back when I took it, MAG 40, the whole logic behind taking the 40-hour block was the theory behind the range portion is so that Massad Ayub actually has a tangible, discoverable record of your shooting ability. Given how prolific, cameras are these days, I think that there is enough of a way to document your own shooting performance that just the classroom portion of MAG 20 should be sufficient.
Right.
But that's kind of tough to catch. So while I haven't taken it myself, I have heard very good things about Andrew Branca's Law of Self-Defense course. And the fact that that's offered as e-learning just makes it a whole lot more accessible as well.
Yeah, that was actually one of the first. So I read one of Massad Ayub's books.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the title of it. I'd have to look in my Kindle history. But the one that definitely sticks out of my mind is the Branca's book.
Mm-hmm.
Law of Self-Defense was phenomenal. I recommended it to everybody. I mean, hell, even before you start carrying a gun, right?
Yeah.
Look at it from a non-lethal perspective. And I love the fact that your predominant and primary loadout. It starts with essentially non-lethal stuff, right?
Effectively,
effectively. With that being said, though, there are legal implications for that as well, right? There are legal implications if you look at the continuum of force. If you're willing to stand long enough to employ non-lethal means, right? Then that means that situation could escalate. And honestly, you need to be prepared for that. Even from a just from a legal understanding. Like if this happens, this is what you're susceptible to, right? So yeah, I mean, I'm honestly right there with you, man. Like you, I too, and just to kind of go back to like my work environment thing. My bosses are really cool. Whenever we have like big company on-site meetings or whatever have you, me and the senior leadership will go tear it up. We've closed down a few establishments, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, regardless of what the culture is, by law, if I know that I'm going to become inebriated, or which I very likely am going to be, I shouldn't be carrying a firearm, right? Aside from the whole establishment, I know we can get into the nitty gritty details of like, well, if it does, more than 50% of its business in alcohol sales, then you can't carry a gun there, or whatever have you, because that is a thing,
yes,
right? But or if you're going to go to Red Lobster, you could sit in the restaurant, but you can't sit in the bar, right? Whatever have you. Like there are implications to that. But even if you're not, let's just say that wasn't a thing, didn't matter. You carried a gun as long as you don't get into a shooting while you're inebriated. Nobody cares, right? But even still, that your judgment is going to be impaired. If you have no business getting behind the wheel of a vehicle or heavy machinery, you probably shouldn't be behind little machinery like a firearm.
I'm really good with little machinery. I'm amazing with little machinery. You have no idea.
Yeah, at least that's what it says in the truck stop restrooms.
It is. So I got to ask, Alex. Do the dogs wear suits?
So mine don't, but interestingly enough, my tailor did make little suit jackets for his dogs.
Nice. What you got for pooches, man? They're doing all the woofing. What do you got back there?
So we have 6 dogs in the house right now. 3 of them are ours. All of them are rescues. 3 of them are fosters, and we have apparently become the pit bull household. So nice. I've got 5. I've got 5. 3 pit, 2 Staffords, and then Chloe, who's a little Chiweenie. So yeah.
So who are we? Is that Chloe back there talking shit?
The high pitched one is Chloe, but the other one that you heard, Raising Hell, was probably Jackson, because he's the newest addition.
Nice.
Yeah, he's protesting.
So this is how many dog podcasts? Let's do the math. So there's 6 plus 3 up here.
3 here.
Plus 3. Yeah, dude, this is a 12 dog podcast, man.
Plus a cat.
Right.
Yep, got the cat too. Interestingly enough, just side tangent about pit bulls and Staffords. My sister-in-law and my brother have 3 pits, and my sister-in-law is actually participating in, I think it's with UCLA, in the study, like teaching the dog the push button speech. Like she's got the whole mat laid out, and the dog will literally communicate, not just for herself, but for the other dogs.
Oh, wow.
Like, yeah, she has buttons that say the other dogs' names. And like if the dog that can talk knows that the other dogs have to go outside, she will hit that dog's name and potty or outside or whatever. She's the ambassador for the other dogs.
That's nuts. Absolutely crazy.
It's hilarious because she's all giddy about it. She'll call us every time, like, I taught her a new word. I'm like, oh God.
Holy shit, dude.
Yeah.
I've always said, like, I swear to God, Karma understood perfect English. She's not with us anymore, but the world's best golden retriever, I know for certain. So I'd be like, Karma, go get me the blue ball. And she'd come back with a blue ball.
Like, which is also interesting because dogs are colorblind.
Wow.
No, they're not.
Yeah, they are.
I don't know about you.
I have it from a very good authority.
Did you ask the dog what the fucking button to press? Did you say, hey, are you colorblind?
No.
How do you know? How do we know dogs are colorblind?
That's like a fairly well-known thing, dude.
I don't think so.
I mean, they can't look up either. It's got to be true.
Nope. The lizard people want you to believe dogs are colorblind.
Hold on.
So you're one of those people that believes in dogs?
Yeah, there we go.
Have you ever seen your neighbors bringing groceries?
Yeah, this could get. See, that's what we need to start doing, TJ. If we want to take over Rogan, we got to start acting more like Rogan.
Okay, so actually, I did the Jamie thing and I Googled it. So apparently, dogs are in fact colorblind, but they do see in shades. So the dog eye color spectrum goes from like a dark gray through yellow, white, and into blue. Okay, so
Hey,
I'll give you the blue ball, but if you had a red ball, she would have been lost. Just saying.
I don't know. All I had was a blue ball and a tennis ball. So I had a regular tennis ball and a blue ball, and she knew the difference. I might have held it up 1,000 times and said blue ball too.
Yeah, that's possible.
Or she might have overheard my conversation with my wife where I was talking about other blue balls. But either way, the dog knew.
I warned you, Alex. I warned you during the pre-show.
He did. I know he did.
You signed the waiver. Moving on. Anyway, but no. So
Yeah.
So I'm curious. So, and for those that are playing the home game, right? So, Alex, of course, being on Instagram, it appears that most of his social media platforms are his namesake. The Suited Shootist. Invite you guys to check that out. And honestly, Alex, I had seen some of your videos before you even came on the show.
Thank you.
More specifically around your coverage when the Enigma first came out, right?
Mm-hmm.
There were a bunch of people that did videos on that stuff, and of course, one of yours popped up in that. Very good content, by the way.
Thank you.
With that being said, though, I'm curious about your experimentation with your carry options, right? We could go a couple of different ways with this, but I'll kind of leave it up to you to drive. This is funny. Kent's image for when he turns off his camera is my face. That's amazing. Did you experiment? So going through your tailor and stuff like that, obviously, I'm sure that you probably had some suits that were tailored to accommodate for concealed carry. But what were some of the things that you went through while you were on that journey with regard to your experimentation for carry options, right? I see like from your YouTube channel, I see you did some coverage on shoulder holsters, a couple of different other holsters. But I'm curious what you found to your liking the most.
Sure.
Maybe your style of carry now, type of holster. Things like that, because this might seem menial, but off to the side, like we always ask for questions from our audience and our listeners and stuff. And truth be told, one of the biggest questions that Kent and I often get, as I'm sure you can relate to, are, what holster are you using? What holster should I be using?
Sure.
Help me kind of pick this out. But as somebody, I'm typically a jeans and t-shirts kind of guy. 99% of my t-shirts are jiu-jitsu themed. But coming from a studio like this is one of the reasons why I started going to like a Glock 43X or 48 and an Enigma, is because I found that works good for me when I am in more dressy attire, slacks, button downs, whatever have you. But as someone who wears these things a little bit more frequently, right? What's been your experience like? What have been your recommendations? Yeah. What did you find that just didn't work at all? I think is also a good option.
So I made the shift to appendix carry, I think back in about 2012 at this point, and just various different flavors of holsters. I tried the single piece sidecar design for a minute, but had that crack on me, after wearing it with a blue gun and some martial arts stuff. And so I was like, okay, so let me just separate those. So I had the holster and the mag carrier. And honestly, I got to give the dude a shout out. Gabe at KSG Armory was super cool. And he had actually sent me a couple things just to like screw around with in T&E back before I had the page or had the channel or anything, just because we had some mutual contacts, and his focus was just kind of getting good gear into the hands of good people. So he was incredibly generous with me back before he had any real reason to be. So thank you. Big shout out to him. And that's where I started kind of developing my understanding of what I liked in an appendix carry holster. And then after I took the Spencer Keepers class, I got to test drive a keeper for those 2 days. And I was like, okay, that's why this thing is so much more expensive, is because it's significantly improved design. So ran that for a while, but that was before the Cornerstone came out. And again, since my requirements put me in a position where I needed to have something tuckable, I was like, all right, so let's play around with this. And I'd heard the name Darkstar come up more than a few times. So I grabbed one of their Orions, and that's when I started kind of playing with the understanding of what components are critical for a tuckable holster, because whenever the shirt is untucked, it's not pulled as close to the body as you would imagine. And so you can typically get away with something that is not necessarily as, doesn't have the same efficacy of concealment features. So that's when I really started developing the real appreciation for what the wing and the wedge do. And most importantly, the discrete carry concepts clips, because discrete carry concepts is the only company out there that I'm aware of that makes a purpose-built behind the belt clip. Every other fucking holster out there that is advertised as tuckable has these big honking clips on the belt with nothing to explain them. And it's just like, okay, do you not understand how this works? So like, okay, cool. You can't see the gun, but I either have these pulled out loops or these big plastic deals and nothing to justify why they're there. And it's sticking out like a sore thumb. So,
you mean the crossbreed cross sticking out on the outside of the belt? Like that's not normal? I thought that was the thing. That's not a thing.
So,
well, yeah, no, definitely not.
So
and that was it. And then from there, once I found out that the Enigma was coming out, I had been in contact with John and Sarah at that point, and so I was like, okay, this looks like it has some real serious promise. So once I was able to get my hands on one, yeah, it was one of those things that if I am carrying a gun and it's not a pocket gun, it's an Enigma at this point. Like, doesn't matter if my shirt's tucked in or not. It's just it is become my preferred setup if I can shake it.
So we got a good question in the chat. I'm gonna highlight for you from Don McKellar. Do you find the Enigma more comfortable than a standalone holster using DCC clips or other method?
I do, and the main reason for that is simply because when you're running belt clips, you are still basically tethered to that one latitude of your belt. So whatever level your belt's at, that's the level that the gun's going to be at. And that is regardless of whether or not that is the optimal position based on your particular build. When you separate the gun from the belt, not only are you able to adjust the actual vertical position and the lateral position to where you can find the sweet spot of it, and I will say that most dudes don't wear their pants at the right height. Most dudes wear their pants at their hip, not at their natural waist, which is somewhere between your navel and your hip bones.
Yeah, I think if we want to go by military standards, generally it's approximately 1.5 inches below the belly button.
Yeah, exactly. And generally the biggest excuse for that is, because myself included, if you got that successful lifestyle body and you've got a little bit of the built-in body armor, then that typically can be almost your widest point. And it's like, okay, well, you still want to have the pants ride there because number one, it actually creates a more flattering silhouette. And depending on exactly how you are composed, if that is the squishiest part of you, it's also generally a whole lot easier to hide a gun than if you're trying to put it on top of bone. So there are a whole lot of benefits to it. And then also just aside from that, the proportionality of it. And that's also something that Tanner Guzzi has been talking about a lot lately, is kind of how he is seeing this resurgence in more high-waisted trousers and how it actually helps to accentuate the athletic male physique. But that's its own thing. Interestingly enough, though, for as subjective as a lot of this is, there is some science and some math behind aesthetics and why certain things are visually pleasing. So it's not just, oh, well, I'm told that this thing is pretty, therefore it's pretty. Just a bit of a tangent. That's the distinction between fashion and style. Fashion, bell bottoms, hammer pants, and Jinko jeans were all fashion.
You lay off my Jinkos, bro.
But style is almost just personal branding, because whether I'm wearing this, or whether I'm wearing jeans and my Shivworks t-shirt, all of that is still my style. It is a visual representation of me, and that's why style differentiates person to person. It's there is no consistent style. There can be some common elements, there can be some common themes, but it's not the same.
Right. One thing that I do want to bring up to you, you touched on it briefly, at least a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned with the issue, we'll call it printing, right? Be it the gun or the unexplainable belt clips that are sticking out from underneath your shirt, right? Have you ever, and if this is applicable, great. Let's visit this topic. If not, no big deal. But have you encountered instances where you had to kind of explain away, or have somebody, like, maybe you noticed somebody was paying attention to, that clip hanging out of your belt or anything like
Several
that?
times, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if, from a professional stance, right? Obviously, you don't dress like this for your own health, right? You probably do find some personal gratification out of looking nice. But in a professional setting, right? What are some of the things that you've addressed handling that, in just everyday life?
So, one instance, it was a pull the dot loop, and it was actually somebody who recognized what it was because they were also a gun dude. And they were kind enough to just kind of clue me in as to, like, hey, that's not as subtle as you think it is. There were other instances where it wasn't necessarily overt curiosity as to, like, hey, what's that? But I've caught. I mean, there have been instances where I've had people just go, "Hey, is that a gun?" And depending on who it was and where I was, I would either go, "Yeah," or like, "No, are you fucking crazy? Where do you get that from?"
Right. No, Mrs. Flight Attendant, it is not.
I mean, don't get me wrong. In the right set of circumstances, if somebody asks me that question, I will gaslight the fuck out of them. So
nice.
I mean, it's just is what it is. But what I've found more often than not, both in my personal experiences and talking to some other folks, is, and this is another thing that a lot of people get wrong, the expectation in sort of the general consciousness is somebody is going to see something and go, "That's a gun." Doesn't really work that way.
No.
It's a progression. That's weird. What is that? And then they zoom out a little bit, take in a little bit more information, and then they start piecing things together. And depending on the circumstances, either they don't have enough information to figure out what it is, they figure out what it is and don't care, or they figure out what it is and they do care. And the problem is that you don't really get to control which one of those it is. Interestingly enough, Eric Nelson of Nelson Gunsmithing actually wound up doing a short response video after I posted the one sharing my story about getting discovered armed at a place of employment where it was against policy. And he shared his experience where effectively he got swatted because somebody had identified that he was armed and called the cops on him because they took exception to that. I'm like, well, I don't think he should have a gun. And the reality is a lot of the people that don't like the idea that we carry guns are not the type to confront armed people.
Right.
They're going to call somebody else to do that shit for them.
Much to my chagrin.
So, it's one of those where, don't get me wrong, I am fortunate enough, especially in the circles I run, to know some of the finest cops that probably have ever, been on the job. I try and keep the professional interaction to a bare minimum.
Right.
So, that's another one of these tropes that I think really needs to be squashed, is the whole, oh, people don't notice. No, it's a fact that a majority of the people don't care. People notice a lot. basically our entire processing system is based around pattern recognition. That's how humans operate.
Right.
Because there's so much stimulus coming at us at any given point that all your brain is doing is prioritizing what it can safely ignore. And it's the deviations that you tend to hone in on. So
I'm waiting for the day when you've got that person that's like a casual, not like they realize that at some point you're carrying a gun, but up to that point, they've been like, oh, they know you're the gun guy at work or whatever. So like, oh, well, if all shit hits the fan, I'm just going to Alex's house or TJ's house or Kent's house. And then like they realize you're carrying a gun, like, oh, I'm not cool with you carrying a gun, loud screeching noises and calling the cops and swatting you and whatnot. I'm like, you hypocrite. I'm waiting for that to happen.
Yeah.
Like you just said you were coming to my house when all hell broke loose. What if I was prepared for all hell break loose when I wasn't at home?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So
it
can happen.
People notice this stuff. But to bring it back full circle, so if it's not Enigma based, as long as it is a good quality holster that is purpose built for your gun that can accommodate the discrete carry concepts behind the belt clips, cool, rock on. I will say that with the behind the belt clips, because they are only attaching to the waistline of the pants themselves, the lighter the gun, the better, and the further apart the clips can be spaced, the better. Because
I'm looking at Dark Star Gear's website right now, and it looks like a lot of their, and I just clicked on an option for Glocks, but it looks like they're doing, like, instead of doing the two individual or the mono clip with the two clips on it, it looks like they've gone to a single clip that's really wide.
So the OEM on the Dark Stars has always been that single steel spring steel clip. However, the attachment points, those can be retrofitted with the discrete carry concepts. However, trying to run like a Glock 19 or similar in an Orion with those behind the belt clips is a lot of weight to be hanging off of a fairly narrow strip of the waistband. Right. So that can create some sagging and basically pull the waistline of the pant below the belt if you're not careful.
Yep.
And this is the other thing that people don't realize is, again, for some reason, dudes have this aversion of their clothes actually touching their body, or like they're trying to keep those points of contact to a bare minimum. But if you have pants that fit properly, the entire front crotch panel of the pant basically will hug the holster into the body and help provide a little bit of friction and a little bit of retention, so that way that pressure of the holster being sandwiched between your pants and your body is part of what's holding it in place, not just hanging all of that weight off of that single point of contact with the clip.
Yeah, look at it as a whole system, right?
Precisely.
Not just the holster and the gun, but the combination of the holster, the gun, the pants, and the belt.
Exactly.
It's all going to be a proper fit.
Right. But, and of course, if it's too loose, then it's number one, it's going to look sloppy, and also baggier clothing, from my experience, limits mobility. And if it's too tight, well, then at that point, buy a holster for a Glock 34, so at least that way you'll impress people.
It definitely limits mobility when it's too tight.
Well, yeah, depending. I mean, Patrick Swayze did okay, but
touche, salesman, touche.
Worked okay for Chuck Norris too, but what you gonna do? So yeah, but really at this point, all of my concealment options are either an Enigma or a pocket gun. Those are the two that I've landed on. I know Cecil has made a very compelling argument for ankle guns. They don't really necessarily fit my context all that well. And one thing that I will say for ankle guns and pocket guns is that they're great for like socially denied areas where there might be some like social consequence if you get discovered armed. But I am not going to sit here and advocate that anybody break their own company policy by carrying a gun. You do what you think is appropriate. I will simply share my personal experience. I was brought into the HR office, and I was requested to roll my pants basically up to the calf, exposing my ankles, and I was asked to turn out my pockets. So quite literally, anything outside of a deep concealed gun where everything was riding below the waistline in the bathing suit area would have been discovered, regardless of how it was carried. So if you are going to assume that risk, that is something that should probably factor into the math. Because here's the thing that a lot of people don't realize. Your employment is a contract. One of the terms of that contract, I almost guarantee, regardless of where you work, is that you are subject to search by your employer at their discretion.
Got to read that employee handbook.
Yep.
So,
because that was the other amusing thing that came out of the work, where all these Google School of Law graduates saying, oh, your rights were violated. No, it wasn't the government. It was a private company. It's a contract that I signed. It was in the paperwork.
Yep.
You should have sued. Oh, really? You think that didn't occur to me?
Or I'm salaried. Why do I have to work weekends?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's an interesting thing. Look, I'm a full believer in the Enigma. I love the Enigma. I think especially for the smaller guns, it works great. Haven't tried it on my Glock 19s or my 34 yet. Still waiting on a holster to get here. But I'm a fan. I love it. I love the idea.
One thing that I found was when I was running a keeper, it was a 17 length. When I switched over to the Dark Star, I actually wound up running a 34 length. And what that allowed me to do was actually run the Enigma a little bit higher up on my torso and still have that same, basically have the holster stop at the same point that it did previously, which personally I found immensely helpful. So even though I'm running a 19, it's a 34 length holster.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
I'm a big fan of full size holsters, no matter what.
Yeah.
Like, it's all 34 length, or, in the Walther guns, it's all the full length. Like, Well,
because I think it was Matt Jaques calls it the Lego principle, where like if the Lego was this big, it wouldn't hurt to step on. So you want to make the holster
that's
the
good.
hole, right?
I haven't heard that. That's good.
I think that was on one of the primary and secondaries where they were talking about concealment. So like it was him, it was Varg, it was I think John Hauptman and somebody else. But yeah, it was a great episode. It was like 4 or 5 years ago at this point, but definitely worth checking out. And yeah, so like the
interesting concept.
The more surface area you can spread that weight over, the better. I did see somebody in the chat ask about discreetly adjusting gun dick. I mean, it kind of depends. It's one of those where if I'm in a public setting and I see that there's something that needs to be addressed, I typically just duck into a restroom, or if need be, and that's like not readily available, I'll just like duck into a corner and adjust whatever has to be adjusted. Or
it's interesting how like common etiquette, right? Like, I mean, in theory, like even if you're not carrying a gun or whatever have you, it is considered impolite in general society to even adjust your waistline, right? If your gig line, your belt and pants are out of alignment, whatever have you, you should excuse yourself to the restroom or a private area and adjust that stuff, right? Same thing with a gun. I mean, no one's going to question, I got to go to the bathroom, right?
Yeah, exactly. Or let's say that you are at some like professional function, if it's at like a convention center or like a hotel, go up to the bar or the coffee counter or whatever, something that stops, about, mid-level. And then that way you can do whatever you need to down here and nobody's really seeing it. So, I mean, at the end of the day, this is basically tactical magic. It's all misdirection. It's like, you're just doing shit over here, or this is what you want people looking at while you're, doing whatever you need to. And that's
tactical misdirection. It's like pocket sand. I love it.
Basically. And that was one of the things that when I was at the tactical conference this year, I sat in on Craig Douglas's experiential learning lab, and it's really interesting to watch like a dozen people cycle through this scenario and just kind of watch everybody's responses to it. And there's a hot wash at the end and fielding all these questions. One thing that he's talked about repeatedly is for people to develop the verbal agility. He encouraged them to go to Toastmasters. And as you would imagine, somebody asked about the types of folks that have a kind of a natural inclination to that skill set, and sales falls into that category. We talked to a lot of people. We need to be at least somewhat in tune to those cues of body language and things like that. But one of the other aspects that he talked about was basically being able to sell a character and being able to effectively lie to somebody. Because if you are in one of those circumstances and you are dealing with an aggressive professional predator, they can smell real, and they can smell when they're not getting it. So being able to either feign compliance or do that type of misdirection, I point blank asked him, "It's like, look, I got no problem with the talking bit, but where do you go to learn how to be a sneaky bastard?" Because that's one thing that I'm not good at. I'm very easy to read in that regard.
A book that I would recommend to you on that front is called Never Split the Difference.
Okay, I'll check it out. Because he recommended basically improv classes or acting classes.
Yeah, that's a part of it too. But there are exchanges between human beings that we can control if we go into it from a cognitive mindset. And this book was written by a former FBI hostage negotiator.
Okay.
Right. Incredible book. Not super complex, very easy to understand. I have the audiobook version, right? I love books that have the author narrate the story, of course.
Yeah.
But very, very good content. I've actually listened to it 2 or 3 times at this point, because there's always that little nugget that you didn't pick up the first time. But I reread books all the time as well. But yeah, Never Split the Difference is one that I recommend. Verbal Judo is another good one. That's a little bit more of an archaic, probably
that one. Yeah.
It's a legacy approach to that kind of stuff. But yeah, Never Split the Difference has been my Bible when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Nice. I'll have to check that one out. I need to add that to the library. One other question I see from Don here. I'm still running the standard leg leash personally on the Enigma. I have not found it necessary to upgrade, but I know some folks that have and have had good success with like the Bumster or some of the other aftermarket stuff that's out there. One of the beautiful things about the system is that it is so modular, so you really can kind of tweak whatever aspect you feel needs improvement. But I think the biggest mistake that people make is, like, if they're in the Filster workshop, they're seeing everybody do all this stuff to it, and it's kind of like the person that goes out and buys the Roland Special instead of a Glock 19 and learning how to shoot first. Start with the bone stock and then identify what the weak points are for you. Because, just because somebody else's experience is that they found that X or XYZ needs improvement, I would rather take the thing and then identify how I would want to make it better, so that I can take it from, say, an 80% solution to like a 98 or a 99% solution, than buy the upgraded thing from the factory and only have it get me to like an 88% solution.
Right.
It's just a much expensive 88%. So
yeah, it's it kind of actually falls into the rule of 7 days, right? It's actually believe it or not, it's a personal finance concept, in that if you find something that you really, really want, you are driven and you desire this object. Maybe it's a new TV, new car, whatever. Acknowledge that you want that, but give it 7 days. If you still want it within 7 days, after careful, consideration and thought, do you really still want it? Right? If that's the case, then maybe you should proceed. With equipment, it's the same way. Like I run the factory leg leash as well. In the first couple of days, I'm like, Kent, you and I actually talked about this. Hey, I can't get this leg leash to stay put. It's always opening up, it's loosening up, it's making it weird. By the end of the day, I've got this leash dangling down around the back of my knee because it's loosened up that much, whatever have you.
All I did on mine was I knotted it, and that was it. So yeah.
Fuck, never thought of that.
Yeah. He's like, damn it, it's small enough to tie into a knot. Yeah, honestly, mine ended up staying put. I gave it a full week. I was like, look, I'm going to wear this thing every day for a week, no matter what I'm doing. If I'm still having this problem, I'll give it a closer look, and then revisit and reacquire my target from there. Like, what am I actually trying to accomplish here? So
yeah. So Don, if you have the clip constantly popping open, I don't know if you have the Gen 1 or the Gen 2. They did recently upgrade the buckle on the leg leash, but if you are running the upgraded version and it's still doing that, then yeah, at that point, one of the upgraded one of the actual aftermarket ones may be worth checking out. But
the upgraded one's worse for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. How about that? I like the old one better.
Kent is one of those guys that will find something wrong with everything that he has.
Okay, yeah. So if you've got the Gen 1, then the Gen 2 basically can't pop open because it's kind of woven in place. And then
my Gen 2 pops open all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know, like I literally took the leg leash off the old holster that I wasn't using anymore. Because my wife stole my red dotted Glock 48. And I have an Enigma set up for an LCR.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, you know what? I don't know why this Enigma with this LCR and this whole thing. So I just swapped the 2 leg leashes.
Weird.
Dude, if I could count the number of times in my life I've heard and weird associated with me or something around, like, believe me, I know. All right. But I get the concept, right? Like, it's supposed to do the, like, tongue and groove thing or whatever. It seems like it would work just fine. But, yeah. So Don's back to his floodlight. Well, I mean, yeah, dude. Rock the floodlight. I love the floodlight. I wear those all the time.
I mean, it's the Enigma is not a universal solution for everybody. It just seems to address a lot of the challenges that a lot of people have had, but it ain't right for everybody.
No, I mean, what a good product. Like, the product itself and the avenues it's opened up that used to be solved by straight up gimmicky nonsense like belly bands and fucking like all this terrible ideas. And you had ladies who were literally carrying in a flashbang bra holster.
But bro, no, the holster is called the Air Marshal. It's got to be good.
Right. What's the one with the ad with the footsteps of the Navy SEAL in it?
It's like I don't even want. Yeah. Oh God. Just what a train wreck.
Mm-hmm. All right. So time to flip the script, man. We've been doing this for a hot minute. It's time to move towards the end of the show. So something that we've started doing that we should have been doing from the beginning, it only took me 108 episodes to figure it out. You got any questions for us, Mr. Alex? You got anything that any good like journalism stuff coming out that you just have to figure out with us? Or
what? Not specifically, but since I end all my live streams with this that I do on my Patreon, I might as well break this out and have some fun with you guys on it as well. So there are a couple of questions that I like to wrap everyone up with, and I think it'll be some good conversation points. So first one would be, if you had to identify one thing that you think gun dudes should stop doing, what is it?
They should stop stealing Scott Jedlinski's question from his podcast, because he's been asking that one since day one.
You know what? Damn it, that's right.
Ha!
My bad.
No, it's cool. What should gun dudes stop doing? Gun dudes should stop being gun dudes and start being dudes with guns. We talked about the talisman thing before. Mm-hmm. I'm having a big problem with talisman stuff right now, with a subset of folks in the training world who are coming for classes, and they're just, I bought the thing, I have the thing, so we're good, right? So we gotta stop with that. What about you, TJ?
Oh Lord, where to begin? I'll keep it short. Honestly, I think stop preaching. Right? I mean, there's a difference between conversation and being, preachy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not cool in any realm. Like, it's kind of like there's that Ron White segment that he does where he's making fun of bouncers. He goes, I bet all they do is they hang out with other bouncers and they talk about bouncing, and they go home and watch Roadhouse and jerk off and talk more about bouncing, right? Same thing with car guys, right? Or the whole vegan CrossFitter thing. What do they talk about first?
Yeah.
Right. Stop being preachy, man. You're not gonna win anybody over. Stop thinking everybody gives a shit about what you're doing. Like, if people are curious and they want to have a conversation, be a good ambassador, right? To harken back to our previous statements. But yeah, stop the preaching. Get off your soapbox.
Awesome.
Of course, I say that being a complete hypocrite, and we run a podcast doing the exact same thing. But whatever.
So the next one is, what is your favorite menswear accessory? And feel free to keep this open-ended, so doesn't have to be a specific category.
Menswear accessory. My wedding ring.
All right.
Okay, this is gonna be way less cool than or way less romantic than Kent's, but shirt stays.
Underrated piece of equipment. Now, I will say this is a big consideration. If you're gonna run shirt stays, then that is a prime use case for deep carry, because if you try and clear a tucked-in shirt with shirt stays, that is a motherfucker. It can be done, but you're gonna ruin something.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But yeah, as far as if we're talking like the shit, the last things, the things at the impulse counter at the haberdashery, right? Shirt stays all day long, man.
Breaking out one of those
Fucking haberdashery.
Yeah, haberdashery is their $5 word for the night. This is why you don't pay me to do this podcast.
All right. How about favorite adult beverage?
I feel like being really, really over sentimental and saying the one I'm having with my friends. Nah, let's see. Something brown water. All right, cool. Local. Crosswater Distilleries right down the street. Loving their bourbon right now.
Nice.
So I'll go with that right now. How about that?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of ones that I can. So I will typically mix my alcohols with certain things, but I choose my alcohols based on whether or not I can drink them straight or not. Right.
Okay.
So at present, I have become a big fan of Basil Hayden's.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, I like Basil Hayden's. Otherwise, I mean, my typical adult beverage is generally like a Tito's and soda with a lime. So,
got to make weight.
Yeah, Master Worlds is coming up, man.
So now that dovetails into the next question, because you can't say jujitsu, because what is one non-tactical hobby?
One non-tactical hobby that is not jujitsu.
No guns, no applied violence.
Oh, dude, I'm going this weekend off-roading.
Nice.
Fuck, it's gonna be mine.
I mean, you can be unoriginal and say the same thing.
How about hunting?
Okay.
Can I say hunting without it's applied violence to small furry creatures, but it's not practical.
Yeah. It's not applied violence. It's waiting. It's professional waiting with a firearm.
Yeah.
But that being said, hunting's a good one too. I like hunting.
Absolutely.
But,
and then I know that this is being done on I think YouTube Live, so we can't show anything. But what weapon do you have within arm's reach right now?
Ruger LCR.
My gun safe is behind me. Pick one.
Nice. Actually, y'all are actually catching me slipping right now. The only things I have within reach are an open L folding knife, a little RG-22 revolver that was gifted to me by my father-in-law, and a lightsaber from Galaxy's Edge.
I mean, to be fair, if lightsabers were real, that'd be a dope-ass EDC. I'm just saying.
I mean, so here's the thing. It might not be real in your sense, but I mean, you could bludgeon somebody with this thing pretty solid. It's basically an 18-inch pipe.
Yeah, so that's one of those real deals that you build when you go to Disney, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, those are pretty dope. I'll give you that one.
Yeah. Like you could club a baby seal with that thing.
So that answers my question of what would be your world's favorite superpower? I want to be a Jedi so goddamn bad.
Is Jedi a superpower though?
I mean,
only certain people are born with the capability to harness the Force.
Right, midichlorian.
Okay. That's interesting.
It is a genetic superpower, so better than anything that exists in the DC universe.
So, but if you're going to go down that rabbit hole, then couldn't you argue that any of the top tier athletes that are genetically predisposed to their performance are then superheroes as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Look, I ain't no Usain Bolt. I can't go into direct sunlight for more than 10 minutes. That's my superpower. I'm translucent.
The kind of invisible man.
Right. Yes.
That's funny.
Oh, that's fantastic. So yeah, that was all right. Yeah. What anything else that you guys have for me?
Yes, sir. Do us a favor and pick a charity.
Second Amendment Foundation.
SAF, cool. And give us, we already kind of talked books a little bit, but recommended reading, just like life stuff. Just what should every dude have read or should read?
How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I mean, I think that one's kind of a no-brainer. It's a staple in the sales catalog.
Yep.
But the number, I mean, you can go on, Live Leak or Active Self-Protection and look at the number of violent encounters that didn't have to end up that way. If somebody simply had a little bit more social ability, then so that's a huge one, I think. When it comes to kind of the tactical realm, one of Masad Ayyub's most recent books, I think it's What the Experts Want You to Know About Deadly Force or something to that effect, where he's got various chapters written by different people. One of those chapters was written by William April. I think John Hearn had a chapter in there. So did Craig Douglas. So that is kind of a good high-level primer of a whole bunch of the various facets of the whole thing. And then I am going to recommend Tanner Guzzi's book, The Appearance of Power, because it's one of those things that regardless of if your daily wear is high-end custom suits or, coveralls and work boots, there is something in there that every man can take away in terms of simply dressing a little bit more intentionally, because I don't want to see the realm of gun dudes all start dressing like Craig Douglas. I want to see the realm of gun dudes all just start to give a shit about their appearance. And that means different things to different people, but just a modicum of care and intent. And that's a great place to start.
Awesome. So if you didn't see it, TJ just did the little roly-poly across the screen. You've got your own T-shirt. Congratulations.
Score.
Yeah, one of the things we do while we beat the boops is TJ designed you a T-shirt on the fly. We've stolen this from the Kill Tony podcast. They draw something every episode, so TJ draws you a T-shirt every episode.
Nice.
And the proceeds of the sale of the Suited Shootist T-shirt will be going to your charity of choice, SAF.
Outstanding.
So every time somebody buys one of those shirts from our little Beep Boop store on the inner Googles, there you go.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm gonna grab some of those then. You know what? If anybody's going to be in town for it at the NRA annual meeting at the end of the month, come find me. I'm probably going to have it. Well, if the shipping turns around quickly enough.
I will say this: the drop shipping program actually does work pretty good. Kent, I've designed a few shirts for Kent. He's ordered those, some hoodies and stuff as well. Shipping's actually quite quick. With that being said, though, what we do, so just to understand and explain that program, at the end of the year, we will tally everything up. We keep track of which shirts go to which charity. Then we just do one quick payout, and I divvy up the money and send it out to those donations. By the way, I want to thank all of our beloved listeners for purchasing those shirts to contribute to charity. I'm so glad that I get so much junk mail now. But it's the price we pay to give back.
I love it. I didn't even think of that part of it.
Oh my God, dude. Every single charity. It's like, oh, well, thank you for your contribution. We've got, I think, Voice of the Martyrs, the one from Bill Rapier, his charity of choice, right? Man, those guys are serious with their mailers. Holy cow. But it's a great cause, and we're always happy to give back. So
good for them.
By the way, again, as a reminder, if you don't feel like purchasing a shirt to donate to the charity of choice, of course, we invite you to go out and check out, SAF.org or the Second Amendment Foundation and donate directly.
Yeah, man. We've had a lot of good charities come across this thing.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't had one yet. I don't know what I'm going to do if they're like Anti-Gingers Anonymous or some shit someday. Somebody brings up some shit that we just can't get behind. I don't know what we're going to do, but it hasn't happened yet. So.
And actually, if you don't mind, one last thing I'd like to interject on the whole charitable front. Support your local animal rescues, because one of the guys that we are fostering right now is an insane sweetheart of a dog. He was wrongfully accused of killing another dog, and so that's why he was taken, put on the aggressive list, and put on the kill list. So if you are in the market for a dog, definitely look at your local rescues. I know that one of the ones here in Houston, they have a veterans program where like they waive all the adoption fees and everything. So yeah, just support your local animal shelters because people suck, dogs don't, and a lot of them are getting a raw deal.
Amen to that, brother.
Absolutely. Well, man, you said it before, time's our most valuable commodity. You've given damn near you've given us 2 hours. You've given the viewers an hour and a half. Thank you so much for that. We really appreciate it.
Hey guys, it was a ton of fun. I'm happy to do it. Thrilled that you guys had me on. And if you guys are just, desperate for a guest and you need a seat filler, feel free to hit me up.
No, way better than that. So to the listener who's yet to have heard from you and yet to have beat pooped you at this point, where's all the links? Where do they go? What do they do? By the way, it's all in the description here too.
Yeah, so you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and I guess theoretically WordPress as well, at the Suited Shootist. I have a friend of mine who is slowly grinding me down and convincing me that I need to have a TikTok as well. So we'll see. Jury's out on that one. But yeah, if you are interested in the balance of carrying defensive tools while not having to dress in the stereotypical 5'11" tuxedo and some of the social considerations of the armed lifestyle. So, if any of that interests you, along with mediocre video production and the odd pop culture reference, I'm your guy.
I just figured you out just now. I know who you are.
Who's that?
You are Seth MacFarlane with guns. That's exactly what this is.
Oh my God. Well, you just made Kent's dream because 99% of our relationship is obscure Family Guy references.
Bro, the pop culture thing put me over the edge. That is who you are. All your branding needs to change. You're welcome. I'll give it to you for free. I won't charge you for the consulting. It's all called what do we call it? I don't know. McFarlane's something. I don't know. It's there. There's something rolling around. But you are the Seth MacFarlane of the gun culture. Congratulations.
I can't sing that well, but thank you.
You found your place. I like it. God, I didn't even get a hello from me in the chat. Oh, Zach, I missed you. Hey, Zach's sad because he had to. Zach sent us a video today of putting solar panels up on his little Airbnb in a hailstorm. That looked fun. TJ, where should people find us? Because I don't do the reads and the things.
Of course. So, Alex, thank you again for joining us on the show this week. And of course, we will have you back. One of the great things about this show is that, while we do appreciate our listeners, we love our listeners and our audience. Of course, we love our guests just as much. So we're always happy to have good guests back on the show for a second, third, fourth, maybe even fifth option. But looking forward to having you back in the hot seat, man. Maybe we'll get a group together thing, kind of have a cigars and whiskey night type deal. We need to do that, Kent. We haven't done it yet.
Yeah, we sounds like a plan. Should.
With that being said, folks, we bring this show to you free of charge, but your support matters and it helps. You're going to buy gun shit, might as well buy it from affiliate links that support our channel. greenmountaindefense.com/affiliate-links is located down there at the bottom of this window. Of course, it's in the description of this video and on this podcast. If you are hearing this on the podcast and you missed the live show, by all means, head on over to our YouTube channel and subscribe there. You can join us live every week at Tuesday night. It's like a bowling league, but for cool people. But with that being said, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, of course, medical. If you're going to carry a gun, you should carry medical. And if you're not going to carry a gun, damn it, you should still carry medical. darkangelmedical.com. Kerry Davis over there has been a guest on the show. Absolutely fantastic guy. So we get nothing back from our, any recommendations or sales from his, from our referrals. But we would appreciate if you let Kerry know that we were showing him some love and just put that the Sling'N Lead podcast sent you in your order notes, just so he has that, to comfort him at night in wherever he might live. I keep forgetting if he's in Texas or Oklahoma, but Colorado. Yeah, whatever. His accent, it's same. The accents, they all look alike. With that being said, folks, that's all the time we have for tonight. Thank you all. God bless you. Take care of each other. Get out and shoot.
Come train with me. Bye.